Hey everyone, yasas que kalosirtate to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today I'm going to be showing you a modern twist on the classic kotopita. Kotopita is a classic Greek recipe. It's basically a chicken pot pie. I've done several versions on the channel and this one is just next level. Today we're going to be making a kotopita galette. So it's like French and Greek together. We're going to be using puff pastry and then topping it with Greek chicken filling that's creamy with all that cheese and bechamel sauce, veggies. It's so good. Let's get started. Okay, we're going to begin by making the filling. So I roasted my own chicken. I just butterflied it and then roasted it until it was fully cooked. But you can definitely take the shortcut and use store-bought rotisserie chicken, or you can just use any type of roasted chicken that you have on hand. I have a whole chicken here, like I said, but you can roast chicken thigh meat or chicken breast meat, whatever you love. Let it cool completely and then just shred it up in a big bowl. We're not going to be using all of the chicken. We're going to be using about 4 cups of it, which is about half of the chicken. The rest I'm going to save for later to use for sandwiches and stuff like that. I have a finely chopped onion here that I'll add to my saucepan with a little bit of olive oil, and I'll let this cook until it's soft and golden. That's going to take 8 to 10 minutes. Once that happens, I'm going to add in 4 garlic cloves that are grated and just mix them in and cook them for a few seconds until they're warm through and fragrant. We're going to add the onion and the garlic to the chicken, along with 1 jar of roasted red peppers. I'm just going to dice these up really quickly. They're drained already. I just drained them in the strainer and I'll just dice them up and add them to the bowl with the chicken. And now we're going to make the bechamel. The bechamel is what's going to make this really nice and creamy. So in the same pot that I cooked the onion and the garlic in, I'll add 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil and about 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. It's looking a little bit dry, so I'll add a little bit more olive oil and cook it for a few minutes, about a minute or 2 until it's toasted. You want to get rid of that raw flour taste. Next, I'll add 2 cups of cold milk, whisk this all together and season it with a little bit of salt, freshly cracked black pepper, and a 1/4 teaspoon. It's actually about 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. Whisk it all up and cook it over medium heat until it begins to thicken. As soon as it gets really hot, you'll see that it thickens pretty quickly. You don't want it to get too thick because it's going to thicken as it sits. This consistency is what we're looking for. Take it off of the heat and add it to the chicken mixture along with 100 grams of Kefalograviera cheese that's grated, or you can use Parmesan cheese instead, 170 grams of Feta cheese. Make sure you crumble it fresh and never buy the pre-crumbled Feta. If you can find goat cheese Feta, that's perfect, but cow's milk will work as well. It'll just be a little bit more dry. We're going to season this with a heaping teaspoon of dried oregano. You can use dried thyme if you prefer, and some crushed red pepper flakes for heat. Give everything a nice mix and then taste it. If it needs more salt, you can add it at this point, or if it needs a little bit more oregano, you could just season it to your liking. And now we're just going to set this aside and get the puff pastry ready. So I have 1 500-gram sheet of puff pastry. This is a large puff pastry, and I usually buy mine at the restaurant supply shop because they sell these large sheets. Otherwise, you can either make 2 with the smaller puff pastry sheets that are sold at the grocery store, or you can connect the 2 and make one big one. Just roll it out so that way it'll be about 14 inches round. This is a rectangle, so it's really not going to get round, but you want the center part to have a 14-inch diameter, and the edges don't really matter because they're going to be folded over to create a rustic crust. Carefully put it on a baking tray that's lined with parchment paper, and then we're going to dock it, which means we're just going to poke some holes in it. That's going to keep the bottom crust from rising during baking. It's going to stay nice and flat. Go ahead and spread that cheesy chicken and bechamel mixture into the center. Leave a little bit of room on the edges so that way we can fold over the puff pastry and make a nice rustic crust. Before we fold over the crust, I'm going to sprinkle some mozzarella cheese. This is grated mozzarella. You can use Gouda for more flavor. About 100 grams or a nice big handful is what you're looking for. And now we're just going to fold over the crust and pinch the edges together so that way they stay together. Just like this, it's going to be nice and rustic. And then I'll make some egg wash by combining 1 egg yolk with a couple tablespoons of milk. Whisk that all together and brush it all around the border of the pastry. This is going to go in the freezer for about 30 minutes while the oven preheats to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. You want to pop it in the freezer so that way it holds its shape and it sets. And also chilling the pastry before you bake it is going to help it bake to be nice and puffy and golden and delicious. So after 30 minutes of chilling this, bake it on the center rack of a preheated oven. We preheated it again to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. This is gonna bake for about 35 minutes or until it's golden and beautiful. Take it out of the oven and let it sit at room temperature for about 15-20 minutes so it can settle down a little bit, and then it's ready to serve. And that's it for today's kotopita galette. It's ready. There are a few steps in it, but like I said before, if you don't want to roast your own chicken, you can pick up a rotisserie chicken from the market and just use that. That's going to cut one extra step because it does take about 45 minutes to an hour to roast the chicken. You can do it ahead of time if you meal prep in the beginning of the week and you have about 4 cups of roasted chicken left over. Feel free to use it. This is so good. The pastry is buttery and flaky. That filling has juicy chicken, the creamy bechamel, all that cheese. The roasted red peppers add a little bit of sweetness and it makes it nice and soft and smoky. The whole combination is to die for. You can serve this as a main course with a nice salad on the side, or as an appetizer. You can go really fancy with this appetizer. And if you want to be extra fancy, you can make individual little galettes. Just cut them into circles or squares and make little individual pies for your guests if you're serving it at a brunch or maybe for Valentine's Day. So many options. You can print this recipe out on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you want to see how we make traditional kotopita, click right here and I'll see you right over there. Yes, us.